Hello, everyone. It's January 18th. On this week's episode, trades and signings, they do exist. McCutcheon goes west, Cole goes south, Reed to the Twin Cities. Sammy Sosa, is it time? Pete doesn't think so. Cubs convention, Cardinals caravan, both happened last weekend. We'll talk about that and much more on Team of Rivals podcast. Let's go.
Smith corks one into right, down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy. There's a drive. Way back. It might be. It's Swinging a high drive into left. Back goes the Craig. He's at the track. He has it. The world champion for 2011. A little bouncer slowly toward right. He will glove it to Rizzo. It's in time, and the Chicago Cubs win the World Series.
This is the Team of Rivals podcast. No insiders, no anonymous sources, just passionate analysis from the bleacher seats. Here are your hosts, Ron Nuttall and Peter Geddes.
All right, guys. How was your week? It's been a good one. It's been a good one. I thought we ended up last week, and it was I thought maybe it's a little bit dry, but some things have not much as transaction wise has shaken loose. But boy, I tell you what, there's a lot to talk about. Right? We've come off a couple of events that organizations have had. There's been a little bit of a dust up, which I can't wait to get to that one. But before we get to that one, I got to tell you guys how my weekend wrapped up, and then I want you to tell me what you've been doing, because like we never talk every day or anything. So So I'm in a house with 3 children, all under the age of 6. And part of this, right? So here's how my weekend ended. So my 6-year-old son has been really getting into the iPad. We've kept it away from him for years, and everything seemed to be fine. But now he's getting used to being able to grab it. I had to take it away from him, and of course the response was, "You're the worst dad ever." I don't remember what I said to him, but his response to me was, "Oh yeah? Well, you're old and you're going to pass away." So I've got that going for me. I think if I could translate. I usually don't laugh in front of them when they do something like that, but I just couldn't help it. The hand gesture is what got me. Me floating away to heaven. I guess it's better than the other direction. But so that was how my weekend ended. Now, the last 2 days we've had snow down here, which is uncommon, and school has been closed for 2 days straight because we've had that massive 2.5 inches of snow.
Who stayed with the boys? You or mom?
We've split, and I tell you what, snow days might sound great. It's pure hell.
It's because they're
anyway,
bored
how was
and
your
they
week,
want
guys?
something to do.
Yeah. So how was the weekend, etc.? All good stuff.
Yeah, it's great. I work in education, so I had 2 back-to-back 4-day weeks. Martin Luther King Day on Monday, and so this has been a quick week for me. So yeah, the last week has been great. Haven't spoken to you 4 times in the last 7 days or anything. So, but before we get too far into it, and obviously Elliott will give you an opportunity to jump in here, but just want to say good evening to everybody who's watching us on YouTube or following along on the podcast after the fact. We do want to encourage you, as always, to catch up with us at teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can contact us at the show at teamofrivalspodcast.com. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we'll drop all that knowledge on you by the end of the show. Elliott, how was your week, man?
It was good. Good. Can't complain. I am ready for the weekend. It could be a sketchy one. Wife is on call, so I could have time with just the son and I. So that goes. Got a couple projects I want to do, but not sure if that's going to happen. But overall, yeah, good week. Previous weekend was good. Lots of news to come out. Lots of fun stuff.
There's a lot of fun stuff. And before we get into events that wrapped up earlier in the week for both of our teams. I do want to say, give a big thank you to Cardinals Nation 24/7, who connected with us earlier this week and mentioned us on their Facebook page, and they have quite a following. But we appreciate that. Chris Lawless runs that, and I tell you, if you haven't checked it out, if you follow Cardinals, anything Cardinals like I do, it's a really good resource. Boy, there's a lot of content daily, almost every minute there's something new that somebody's putting out there. So it's really fantastic. I actually don't know how the guy keeps up with it. But he does a great job maintaining it. But I just want to give him a big thank you. All right, guys. So winter warm up for the Cardinals and the Cubs convention. Both of them ended roughly the same time. So I want to talk about just some of the things we've taken away from both events. And I actually want to start with the Cubs convention. So ladies first, let's go.
Wilson Contreras. Man, he really knows how to start a Cubs convention.
Oh, man, we're going to start with that?
No, we're not going to start with that. We're going to talk about him having the moment of the convention. What was it, Saturday morning? I mean, it was done. The competition was over. He had the line of the convention.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it too because it was the panel with Wilson, Jason Hayward.
And by the way, we're assuming that anybody that's going to be downloading this or watching this is aware of the situation, if you want to call it that. They may want to recap it quickly. Or are we going to?
Wait, which situation are we talking about? Because Wilson Contreras has made the news twice.
Yeah, he's got two.
You're hard to read because I'm not sure which line you were talking about. I was assuming
we're talking about the drop that I put up online for you to play.
Okay.
So Elliott, go ahead and set the stage.
It was fan Q&A, and some little kid was up there, and he's like,
I love that it was
your favorite. What was your favorite defensive play over the course of last year? And so you've got Rizzo saying his tarp catch that was awesome, and his was one against the wall, I think, and but it gets to Wilson Contreras, and he goes.
No, it got to Jason Hayward.
John Lester. I thought it was Willie.
No, it was Hayward. They asked Hayward. It was Hayward's turn, and Hayward said his favorite moment was John Lester picking off Tommy Pham, and then Willie jumped in.
That's right. Because
I think
Willie said,
"Ron, I think you have the cue, don't you?"
Yeah, keep talking for a second though.
Keep talking. It spoils it. It's much better if it comes from the
because Tommy Pham was out there on first, and he was taking 15-foot.
Well, can you blame him first of all? Can you blame him?
No, I mean, we all know Lester's got the yips when it comes to trying to throw to first base, and he maybe throws over 4 times a year, something 3, 4, 5 times a year, and that's it. So there's a really good chance he's either just going to step off and walk towards you, maybe toss it underhand to Rizzo, and you can get back. But game because you've got the Cardinals announcers saying, "Oh, he's not going to throw over. He's not going to throw over."
All right, so I think this is Pete. Is this a good time?
This is the absolute right time.
All right. So here is the audio from what Elliott is talking about. Hang on.
Last year was John Lester picking off Tommy Pham from the Cardinals. I love that a lot.
And I told him to throw the other first. I went out there and said, "Hey, motherfucker, throw the fucking other first." Earmuffs. I'm being honest. And then he threw the first and he get him out.
He's honest. He's an honest guy, man. You just heard it right there. He's just being honest. No, it was as a Cardinal fan, you didn't want that to happen. There's 13 other teams in the National League. Did it have to be mine? But it was. But can you blame a runner for leading off? No, because he never throws over there. But somebody was going to get it, and it just happened to be.
And unless I'm mistaken, that was the game that Schwarber hit the grand slam to win it, right?
Well, why not? I mean,
I distinctly recall texting you, Ron, after the game, and I said, "Which hurt more, Pham getting picked off by John Lester or Schwarber hitting a grand slam?
No, because Schwarber wouldn't have found himself in Iowa last year if he could have played 162 games against St. Louis. I mean, just there's just he's that type of guy. But okay, so that's
finally have a cards killer. Finally,
you know what? Probably not. If we look at it statistically, it just feels that way. So what else? I mean, Contreras had something else to say, but I think we were going to. Are we going to pocket that one for a little bit later?
Yeah, let's save that for a little later because that
agreed.
didn't happen at the convention.
All right. What else out of the Cubs con, guys? You didn't have much for me, and we talked about this before, and it was as far as big news.
There wasn't much big news.
Yeah, there really. Yeah, it was kind of the team asking, the Q&A with the team, pictures. I know that Bleacher Nation was there, and he had a few things up and kind of showing like the hotel and walking around and kind of giving, the bird's eye view tour you get on the sports channels. But come out. I know that I know one of the funny things that came out, somebody asked Theo Epstein where they could get their Bryce Harper jersey, and he pointed them to go ask Chris Bryant.
Yeah, I've got a bullet on that later, guys. But yes, you're right. There's been a lot of that. Boy, I tell you what, there has been a ton. Well, you know what? We're on it, and I don't necessarily have to save it for later. It was one of those I was going to squeak in there, but there was. I mean, and it's not just the Cubs convention. There's been, Harper, call it whatever you want, speculation, talk, hopeful, whatever it is. But there has been a lot coming from the Cubs media and fan base about Harper. So I got to ask you guys this, and even Cardinal fans this. If the Cubs were to sign Bryce Harper after the 18 season's over, which fan base is going to hate the Cubs more? The Cardinals or the Nationals?
No,
in,
Cardinals.
In 2019 season, you think it'll be the Cardinals?
Yeah, I think it's the Cardinals because, and you and I have talked about this before, the Nationals, and it's not unique to the Nationals. I think this is true of any Washington-based professional athletic team. It's a real challenge building a fan base because so much of their population is transient. You've got people coming in from all over the country in order to work in government and to live in government. And so they're just temporary fans. I don't think that they have a huge fan base. So, it's hard for a lot of the people who go to the games to get really worked up about the players because there probably are other teams that they like more, and they just go to Nationals games because
they're local,
that's where they live. Right. I mean, if you lived in Chicago, you'd go to Cubs games. You wouldn't like it, but you'd go.
No, not willingly, but yeah, you're right.
Right. And so I think that's the case with the Nationals. Plus, there's been so much talk about this, and it hasn't just been the last couple of weeks. It's been for over a year. There's been talk about the impending Bryce Harper free agency. And I think that they're probably in the mindset that they're ready to see him go. I know I, as a Cubs fan, am fully prepared for Jake Arrieta not to return. And I was before the season even ended. I had come to grips with this was going to be our last season with Jake Arrieta. And, let's hope that the ride ends well.
Here's my only thought about this, right? If I were a Nats fan, right, and let's think about this. There's two guys that have really, well, maybe you can push it to three if you want to include Zimmerman. There have been three good players that have come up through that organization and been there since they reestablished themselves in DC. Was it 2005, I believe, their first year?
Yeah,
2004 or 5. They've come up, so they really have been the face of the franchise. And I get your point, Pete, and it makes a lot of sense. And Charlotte isn't terribly different when it comes to the Panthers,
right?
Because it is a transient community. And a lot of even the local states, like you could throw North Carolina in there, Virginia, West Virginia. That may have already been split somewhere between the Braves and the Orioles,
and obviously the Reds.
Yeah.
God damn it! You had to do it. You had to do it again. Is your kid awake? Maybe you got to go check on him.
I know what it's like, Ron. This is when I was down there for a few years. It is the most ridiculous thing. Subscriber of MLB TV.
Yeah.
For 25 games out of the year.
Well, in the crappy thing is they play that team 18, 19 times, and that's guaranteed games you're not getting. And so you have to listen to internet radio, which is fine.
Especially because they're not going to put a Reds Cardinals game on as the Fox game of the week. So you're not even going to get a national broadcast.
Right. I mean, probably not even ESPN Sunday night thing. I mean, why would they ever do it? Yeah, it is ridiculous, but it is a short 7.5 hour drive from my house to Cincinnati. So yeah, sure. Why not? Anyways, before we get too far down, going back to this, I would say, guys, that, Bryce Harper is really the face of that team. And I know Strasburg's there and I know Zimmerman's there, but we know Harper is the face of it. And if what I think is going to be irritating to a Nats fan is already hearing Cubs basically announcing it a year ahead of time, telegraphing it. And if it does happen, I think you're going to have a new rivalry. It won't last forever, but there will be one when the Cubs and Nats face each other for sure.
I agree with you, Ron. I think there's going to be with Nats fans. Probably not a ton of them, but I felt like every time
there'll be some loud diehards on the internet.
Yes, there will be. It's gonna it probably won't be as bad as when LeBron left Cleveland the first time.
I want it to be
jersey burning.
I want it to be ugly.
I tell you what, actually,
it's great for baseball if it is.
If it does happen, this is the thing that I fear and that I feel bad about, and that I don't know how I'm going to explain it to my son. But I think that if the Cubs sign Bryce Harper, it probably likely spells the end of Anthony Rizzo in a Cubs uniform.
You think so? You felt differently at one point when I asked you the same question.
I do. Well, here's why. Chris Bryant just agreed to an $11 million contract, and it's only his first year of arbitration. Mm-hmm. He's got 3 more years coming. So just based on the raises he's gotten, by the time that he gets to free agency, you're probably looking at him already making close to $30 million a year on his contract. You are, if you bring back Chris Bryant, which I think anybody, if you compare the two players, Chris Bryant is a more valuable player than Anthony Rizzo, purely from what he produces on the field. Yeah. If you have to make a choice, you're going to keep Chris Bryant over Anthony Rizzo. But if you also happen to sign Bryce Harper for, let's say, $40 million a year, you're probably looking at about $80 million or so committed to 2 players. And Anthony Rizzo took a very team-friendly deal when he signed his extension that bought out his arbitration years. And he is playing at far below his value. You're not going to have $110, $120 million committed to 3 teams. Mm-hmm. Or I'm sorry, to 3 players, and expect to fill out the rest of the roster.
And so, what are they going to do with Hayward? There's another question that they got to deal with.
So I think that if the Cubs do manage to swing Harper, Ricketts may be willing to bite the bullet for a couple of years and go over the salary cap in order to field that kind of a super team. But I think that long term, it probably means that my son's favorite player is going to be moving on to another team.
All right. So there was one more thing. You guys mentioned it on the intro, Elliott. Sammy Sosa. Guys, why not? Why not welcome him back into the organization? What's
Elliott,
wrong?
Go ahead. Go first.
So I was a huge fan of his when I was younger.
Hold on. Let me turn my volume. Let me know when Pete's getting ready to go. I'm just going to turn the volume down slightly.
Yeah. I know, right. And he's probably going to destroy me for this, but I wish he would come back in some sort of capacity. But I think the Cubs are being a little harsh with him compared to what's going on with other players. I mean, look at McGuire. I mean, what was going on there? He dealt with it. He's there he's coaching the organization. But I think Sosa needs to own up to a few things. I was at the last game of the year early, and I was very disappointed and hurt by leaving in like the 6th inning. And I think that's one of the bigger problems, I think, with the Cubs organization and with Ricketts, because Ricketts was a fan before he bought the Cubs, and I think he is a little upset about the way that he treated the team well in the 90s.
Yeah.
So, but I think he needs to apologize, and I think he needs to a few things. Necessarily, he needs to say, yes, I took steroids, but I think he needs to say, apologize to the Cubs.
Sorry for the way I walked
to
out.
the Cubs
Yeah.
franchise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not only was I at that game, I was at Corkback game.
Hey, wow, that's great. Hey, tell me that last game when he left early, what happened there? Did he not start that day? Did they take him out early? I don't recall.
He didn't play.
He didn't play.
He didn't. Yeah.
He didn't play it up.
All right.
And then it got to the fans. We were in the bleacher seats, and it got up to us that, hey, I saw Sosa take off. And we're like, it's like the 6th inning. How was he already? Why is he leaving?
Yep.
So, I mean,
right,
we know it was a crappy year, but.
All right, Pete, I got you on an egg timer. Go.
Okay. How much time do I have? I can
Not
do
very
this
much.
quickly, and I can expand upon it on the website, which I plan to do someday. Okay. So I think you're right, Elliott. I think that Tom Ricketts sees this as his break with Tribune ownership. You're absolutely right. Tom Ricketts became a fan in the bleacher seats at Wrigley Field in 1984. And if you look, the Tribune Company owned the Cubs from 1981 to 2008. What happened in 1984 was not anything that the Tribune Company did. They inherited Dallas Green, and it wasn't long after that 1984 season that they let Dallas Green go, and they broke with the previous ownership and the previous management, and basically took the Cubs. I mean, yes, the Cubs had been bad for a number of decades, but they were on the verge of becoming, it looked like they were on the verge of becoming something special. And instead, the Cubs ownership became the Wrigley Company became known for not taking care of the Cubs. They saw them more as a cash cow and less as a baseball team. And they looked for ways that they could leverage that asset in order to drive eyes to WGN TV and to drive readers to the newspaper. And so I think that a lot of that is Tom Ricketts looking at the way that the Tribune Company treated the Cubs from 1981 to 2008 and making a break from that. And Sammy Sosa is emblematic of the Tribune Company's sins against Cubs fans and his 3 biggest mistakes, and none of which the 4 biggest mistakes, none of which he has come out and apologized for, and none of which was he right on. And this is not limited to steroids. And everybody who says that Sammy needs to, when they hear Tom Ricketts say that Sammy needs to come clean on everything that happened, everybody locks in on steroids. But what they don't do is they don't look at everything that he did. And you're absolutely right. You named almost everything. The corkback bat incident in 2003, he never apologized for it. He just had an excuse. Oh, that's a bat that I use to give the fans a show during batting practice. How do you not have that designated? How do you not have that taken out of your rotation? How do you not take that back into the locker room and leave it in your locker during the game? It just manages to sneak in, and then the other bats that you send for testing. It wasn't like Major League Baseball seized them right away. So I don't think that this was a fluke or anything. I would think it was Sammy trying to get around the rules, as evidenced by the fact that reportedly he tested positive in 2003 for steroids. Now, I know that the results weren't supposed to be made public, but too bad they did. And when he was asked about it in 2005, all of a sudden, Sammy Sosa forgot how to speak English. He was up before Congress and he couldn't speak the language after doing so well during the 1998 home run race that he was in front of every camera that was pointed at him. And finally, you're absolutely right. On the last day that he was with the Cubs at home, he left the game early. He chalked it up to a misunderstanding with the manager about whether or not when he said, "Can I go?" Regardless, in all 4 of those incidents, Sammy Sosa did not apologize to the fans. He didn't apologize to the Cubs. He didn't apologize to anybody. It was always somebody else's fault or somebody else's misunderstanding. And I think that Tom Ricketts looks at that and he says, Sammy Sosa is exactly the symbol of Tribune Company ownership. They never apologized. They never owned up to the mistakes that they made. The only time that they tried to make the team good was by buying over-the-hill free agents who only had 1 or 2 years of value left in order to make the team more valuable, not in order to make the team more competitive. You don't sign Alfonso Soriano and stick him out in left field to make your team more competitive. You signed him to make the team more valuable because you were trying to sell the team. That's why they made a lot of their moves, particularly in 2007 and in 2008. The moves that came were made to increase value because they knew they were trying to dump the team. And that's exactly what they did. And I think that Tom Ricketts looked at it and he said, I don't want to associate myself or my team with what went immediately before us. And I know Sam Zell was there, but Sam Zell was a cipher. In everybody's mind, it just goes tribute to Ricketts. And I think that that's part of the reason why he was reportedly reluctant to give Steve Bartman a World Series ring, because he didn't want to have to be accountable for what happened under Tribune Company ownership. But he realized that it was the right thing to do. And that it would buy some goodwill with fans, especially in the feel-good after effect of having won the World Series. So I'm 100% behind Tom Ricketts on that. In fact, I'm actually not. I'm like 90% behind him. Yeah, Sammy Sosa, before we even consider you coming back, you need to come clean on everything. Not just PED use, but you need to own up to everything that you did to alienate fans and to make it all about you. And even then, as far as I'm concerned, Sammy, you can stay away.
All right. That's it. That's it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I've been looking forward to that all week, and that's what you give me. I didn't get it out. I didn't get an outburst. I didn't get any profanities.
My son's trying to sleep in the other room. Come on.
All right. Fair enough. I think Elliott's son. Is your son okay, Elliott? He's under the weather, Mary?
So far, so good. He's okay. An hour and 15 minutes, and so far, so good.
Yeah. Your son ever mimicked you floating up to heaven because you wouldn't give up the iPad? All right, guys. So the Cardinals wrapped up their winter warm-up, and so there are several takeaways, I think big ones that we walk away with. One of them, just to talk about the attendance at the warm-up, from what we read, is the attendance was down. It was why it was up. It was up versus last year, because I think one of the days that had inclement weather and they couldn't, and they basically missed a whole day. But the ticket sales were down. It was at 16,000 this year, and I believe a couple years prior, coming off of Pennant, it was at 18. So it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I think it's a telling sign. And when you put that together with no shows towards the end of last year to the stadium, I think they have to take notice of these things. Sales were down at this winter warm-up event as well, anywhere from 20 to 50%, depending on which vendor you speak to. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And one of the reasons that is interesting, if you think about it, is that there is no playoff memorabilia. Anywhere from 20 to 50%. Why am I hearing myself?
Sorry about that.
Pete. All right. So attendance was down, but we could talk. I don't want to spend any time talking about that. That's not a very interesting topic. It's just interesting to note. But the big, I thought some of the big news here was, I'm just going to start with Yadi announcing his retirement. Going into this, guys, I wouldn't have guessed that he would have announced it 3 years ahead of time. I think we all knew that, this is going to be his last extension, most likely. You never know with a guy like that. He caught the second most innings in baseball last year. He never wants to be out. It's just, he's saying it 3 years ahead of time. I guess it's a little surprising. I'm not surprised that will be the time he retires. I'm just surprised he kind of talked about it this early on.
Do you think it's an acknowledgement that his skills are starting to decline?
I don't know so much. Of course, this
obviously all came before the last 36 hours, but
yeah. Well, I think it's also anticipation, Pete. I'm sure that he maybe has to work harder or smarter in the off season than he used to. The grind he goes through year over year. I'm guessing, by the time he finishes and he's 38 years old, he knows he's going to be done. So I guess I'm just surprised that he talked about it this soon. It just doesn't seem like a Yadi thing to do. I could see Yadi pressing on for another year and then maybe another year hanging around. So I don't know. I'm glad he's going to finish his career as a Cardinal. That's all I know. And he will have a statue outside of Busch Stadium. Not stand size, but he will be one of the other statues, and his number will be retired, and it's going to be great. So in a day and age where we don't have many players staying with the same team, I think it's a very good sign.
And he deserves it.
Yep.
Despite whatever issues I may have with Yadi or Molina personally, he's absolutely a Hall of Famer, and not just a Cardinals Hall of Famer. He's clearly a Hall of Fame catcher, and he deserves to be recognized for that.
Now, the thing is,
do you think that they'll Put that tattoo on his statue.
They should etch
neck
it in.
tattoo be on the statue.
How would you be able to recognize that it was him otherwise?
That's right.
I'm not touching that. So the interesting thing here is, I guess it's a question I have, is as he goes through these next 3 years, they've got a catcher in waiting, and what will that
waiting behind him?
Right. Yeah, naturally, right? They've got guys in the minor leagues. What are they going to do over the next 3 years? What's that transition plan that they're going to go through? They may not have one today, but they're going to have to. They can't keep Carson Kelly as a backup catcher for the next 3 years. It'll probably stunt his growth at some point. At least you would have to think that. So, that transition is going to be very interesting to how they do that. And I'm wondering, in that third year, is Yadi essentially acting as the backup, maybe getting some time in at first base? We'll see, but it's not something I've heard them address very often. So eventually they'll have to. They probably have another year or two to wait to start answering questions like that, though.
You have to think maybe not this year, because it would appear that they're going for it. You have to think that the transition starts next year. You can't just throw Carson Kelly in there and expect him to catch 130 games after he hasn't caught more than 20 in a year. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't continue treating Carson Kelly like you did last year and expect him to suddenly become your number one catcher. And if you don't think that he's good enough to be your number one catcher, well, then you need to start making that determination and start targeting who is going to come in and be your number one.
I know, I couldn't agree more.
Do you think Carson Kelly catches this year?
Well, so I think Molina caught around 133 or more games this year. Not all of them. Not all of the difference there went to Kelly. How many games do I think he's going to catch this year? I'd like to see him catch anywhere from 40 to 50, and then call it double that by the time we get to the last year.
Yeah, he should be
taking over full time, right?
Yeah. By the time Yadi is in the final year of his contract, Carson Kelly should be the primary catcher.
Right. Just hopefully they handle it better than it was handled with Ozzie and Royce Clayton.
Right.
Ozzie got to start every Sunday in his last year, which was awesome to watch. Anyway, so that's really all I have on that element. Just be interesting to see in 3 years, still doing this, talking about what they're going to do with that transition plan, if Kelly's even around anymore. Mozeliak and DeWitt. I'm going to start with Mozeliak because he was on the
because you love him.
There's just he's a smart guy. I mean, they know more than we do, right? I mean, they do this for a living.
Now, do you mean smart or he dresses smart? Because you admire
he dresses a lot smarter. He dresses a lot smarter.
I agree. The bow tie is a good look.
No, it's not.
Yes.
I know you like. I know you like to sport one, but unless you're selling ice cream, I don't know why you wear it.
Because I make it.
But hey, that needs to be a question on Twitter. There, somebody can throw that up. You're only wearing a bow tie if you're selling ice cream. Yes, no. Yep. Pete, you're on mute, man. Okay. Mozeliak, when he says a word like comfortable or confident, it just makes me cringe because I've heard it before. So I'd like to break down what he means by comfortable or statements that he's thrown out there that we like who we have. We're comfortable. The problem I have with that is every time I've heard that, something hasn't worked out. And comfortable with the lineup isn't sitting very well with me. I don't know what else they can do to address the lineup at this point. If Toronto's not going to trade Josh Donaldson, and they're not going to trade him, they're going to be asking for too much if you try to, turn them around on that. They're not going to sign JD Martinez. They have no place to put him. When they make him a first baseman, he's an outfielder. They already have their outfield. If he was talking strictly about the outfield and he's comfortable with that, I agree. But here's where I'm going with this, guys. Another thing is that when we talk comfortable with the lineup, is he comfortable having Matt Carpenter really bat third, like Mike Matheny's suggesting, which is another takeaway from the warm-up, and have Fowler move back to leadoff? I thought we tried that last year, and I don't know what's changed this year from last. It was all Matt Carpenter's shoulder that affected him batting in the 3-hole. Did he heal and can he bat third now, or is it in his head? I tend to think it's in his head.
Did Fowler start the year batting leadoff?
Yes, and he
because of his struggles.
Yep. Well, they were both struggling. Both Carpenter at third and Fowler at leadoff. They really found themselves at the end of the year. They had flip-flop positions in the order. So that's a big what if and a maybe right there between those two. You know, that's your first and your third hitter. How much of an impact is Ozuna going to have on whoever's batting third? And if it is Carpenter, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm not comfortable with that. I would have liked to seen another capable bat that you can count on, who's an experienced 3 or 4 hitter in that spot. So the lineup is a maybe for me. Maybe we'll see how it works. I don't have the confidence that my GM has. There's just too many people, too many key spots there that are in roles where they're probably not the ideal fit. Carpenter's been no matter what you say about him, he's not the fastest leadoff hitter. He's got a great on-base percentage, and he's a good hitter. He's thrived in the leadoff spot. To already make up your mind that you're taking out of it is a little bit of a head scratcher. Do my Cub friends have anything to say about that? Because you were around Fowler for a couple of years, but I think Fowler is a great leadoff hitter.
I thought he was a great leadoff hitter.
He's got to have the lineup behind him. He's got to have that lineup behind him, right? The Cardinals definitely did not.
And maybe that was all about being comfortable for Fowler. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable with the guys that were hitting behind him, and maybe that's why he struggled at the beginning of the year. Yes, it was a new team, but I didn't feel like Fowler, even in his first year with the Cubs, probably because he had at game 9, batting behind him along with Rizzo and company. So I would be okay with Fowler leading off and just chalk up last year as to kind of an anomaly with Fowler's struggles. So I mean that's kind of how I feel, especially with the inclusion of Ozuna this year. Fowler a little bit more confidence with those guys batting behind him.
Yeah, last year I guess I was
with a healthy Carpenter and Ozuna.
Mm-hmm. I had a lot of questions. I think going into last year, Pete, if we kind of rewind our heads here and remember what we were talking about going into the year, I was skeptical about Carpenter moving to the third position as well. And that obviously I feel worse about it this year, just based on what happened. It's tough because you signed Fowler as a leadoff guy and your center fielder, and he's walking into 2018 doing neither, right? So where is he ideally going to fit in that lineup? Is it the 2 spot, or is it 6 through 8? I'm just not sure. So I have a lot of questions about how that lineup's going to work, and a lot of thoughts about what happens if Carpenter just can't do it again. Who goes there? Does Tommy Pham get a shot to bat third? I mean, games last year where Molina's batting fourth, love the guy, but if he's in your cleanup spot, that means you got issues. So I'm definitely I am not as confident or comfortable as the GM. And speaking of, he actually used the word comfortable. He used the word confident when he was asked about the current bullpen, the way it sits right now. He said he's confident in what they have. As with Gregerson as included in that as closer, already anointed as the closer. I don't know how he can be confident. I don't know what he knows that we don't know as fans, what information he has that we don't. But Gregerson didn't have a very good year last year. Was it all related to Minute Maid Park? In the 81 games, he would have been exposed there. I guess up to 81 games, he could have been exposed there. Was it all Minute Maid Park? What were his splits? What is he seeing? Is it just an anomaly? But is Gregerson a closer? I mean, has he spent an entire season and proven that he can do that role? When they signed Gregerson, I thought it was an okay add to a bullpen or a setup guy or somewhere in the middle relief. To call him the closer today, I don't know, guys. I wanted to ask you the same question about Brandon Morrow when we get a bit later on. Are you comfortable with that being your closer?
Well,
because I can tell you right now, with Gregerson, I don't know.
It's funny that you asked because almost an identical statement came out of the Cubs convention. And I think that if you asked most of the GMs and owners in Major League Baseball right now how they feel about their roster, I bet most of them would say we feel pretty confident about where we stand. I know that there are some who would say that their offseason is not over, but I don't remember if it was Jed or if it was Theo, but they were asked during the Cubs convention, how do you feel about the roster right now? And they said, obviously we're always looking to improve the roster, but if the season were to start today, I feel comfortable. I think it was either comfortable or confident with where we stand. I'm sure that they feel quite a bit more confident now than they did, 24 hours ago, before they re-signed Brian Dunsing. Dunsing just kind of evens things out right now. And if they're unable to, however unlikely it may be, if they're unable to land one of the big three starting pitchers, I think that they feel okay putting Mike Montgomery in as their fifth man in the rotation, because now with Dunsing there, they've got a lefty who can face both lefties and righties out of the bullpen, and they can approach the season the way it is, but they have no depth. So I think that despite saying that they're comfortable, I think that you'll see, the Cubs continuing to try making moves. But I think that that's true of any team. They're going to say that they're comfortable because they want to send a message of confidence to the rest of their team. They don't want to, you don't want to start.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're addressing it publicly, of course, right? Right. You're not going to go, boy, I know we've signed some guys but I'm scared to death of what they're going to do on the diamond. So we're going to look for, we're talking to Greg Holland in 5 minutes. And right. Of course they're not going to go there. Right.
And I saw a tweet earlier today where somebody said, I can't remember if I think it was Mozeliak, who said that if everything goes well, he sees this as a 90-win team. That's assuming that if everything goes well, that you guys are going to win 90. That means no injuries, no regressions. Right. All expectations are met. No regressions to the mean. If Ozuna doesn't show up, if Pham doesn't perform the way he did last year, and I don't know if anybody is expecting to be anywhere close to where he was last year, you're not going to hit 90 wins. So how can you feel comfortable? But I guess it's a question of expectations. What are your expectations? And if your expectations are that you're on the outside possibility of contending for the division, and instead your goal is to nail down one of the two wildcard spots, then maybe you are comfortable.
Well,
and I know you don't want to hear that because
no, it's not that I don't want to hear it, but
I wouldn't. I don't want right now with where they are in their window, and I'm sure that Elliott, you agree with me. I don't want the Cubs aiming to just get in the playoffs. I want them winning the division so that they can avoid that one and done game.
Yeah, no, I don't think it.
I fully expect them to win the division in 2018.
Yeah,
anything short of that is a failure in the regular season.
So, I think the key is, we'll see a month from now how true that statement was. I think that you've come into it from they had a terrible bullpen last year. Blew a lot of late leads, blew a lot of games. I don't know what the hell happened to Sung-Won Oh last year. He did not pitch anywhere near the level he did in 2016. And Rosenthal wasn't very good either, and they lost him in August. You couple that with the fact that you've added essentially one new player to the roster who's a relief pitcher. I think you start to understand why a Cardinal fan hears a statement like confident, and you're like, with what? You brought in one person who's not even a closer, who didn't have a very good 2017, and you're going to tell me that you're confident in the bullpen. You can understand why some Cardinal fans look at that and go, what? I can't. Okay, you're a valid point. You're not gonna publicize that in front of your own players. But if you put all that together, you're like, there's no way you're confident. And I think we know that he knows that we know he's not as confident.
That I know that you know.
You know that I know that you're full of it. You're full of shit. There's no way.
Yeah.
Now I will give. Here's the thing, right? I'd be fine with everybody that they have in that bullpen right now going into the season if they just had a known at the back end. If they just had a known entity for that ninth inning, I'm fine giving Tuivalela a legitimate shot, a full year to stay with the Cardinals, to stay with the big. I think he has to at this point. I think he might be out of options. I could be wrong.
I think you're right. I think Tuivalela has to be on. I think he's out of options. I think
but he gets a legitimate long-term shot. And you got some other guys that can come up. There's a lot of guys that are knocking on the door that are going to get their opportunities. So I'd be okay with all of that if they just had a known entity at closer, and they just don't right now. And that's a big risk to take. We know that. Think what the Nats record could have been in the regular season last year if they would have just had a closer. If the Cardinals would have had a lockdown closer and at least not blown even a third of their leads, then they're right there. Maybe they're playing in the wild card playing game, but I think it's a big risk to take going into the season. So if they don't address that closer at all, I'm legitimately worried because I don't believe they have an offense right now that's going to put up a horde of runs and give them a lot of padding heading into late innings. You do not want to see the Cardinals have a 1-run lead after 7 innings. You needed it to be like, it felt like you needed like a 4 or 5 run lead before you even got that late in the game, before you felt comfortable at all. And they damn near blew some big leads last year. Came very close to I think they probably did. If I go back and look at the record, I know they blew a lot of games last year.
And you kind of mentioned it. I wonder what kind of conversations they had with Luke Gregerson when he was signed. Because they may have made that commitment to him. It's starting to become clear that that's probably what was said to Brandon Morrow when the Cubs signed him was you're going to be, we're not looking to bring in a closer, because it certainly, while they've been connected to some of the guys, it doesn't look like they were aggressive with Davis or any of the other closing options. And so you wonder if that wasn't the conversation the Cubs had with Morrow. And I wonder if a similar conversation wasn't had with Gregerson. And that was part of the reason why he was able to accept the deal that might have been a little bit below the value that he might have been able to get on the market, because he was told, you're going to be our first option at the start of the season when it comes to somebody to shut down the games in the ninth inning. And they don't want to be seen to have gone back on their word by going out and making a move for a Colome or a Holland or a Davis.
Yeah, which is another thing that had come up in this last week. The Cardinals' interest in Colome was evidently overstated in the media and in reporting. Doesn't sound like they had much of an interest.
Why would you? His peripherals stink.
How are Gregerson's peripherals as a closer? Let's look at those. I don't know. Well, I don't know how many games I don't know how many saves he actually has in the 40s.
The fact that they were able to get him for 2 years and $11 million. It's
not a heavy commitment. That's not the commitment I'm worried about. I mean, yeah, you're right. It is only 2 years. And it's
pretty good indication of how much confidence the market had in him as a closer.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other one. And I think we're going to bring him up later. But now that we're on the subject of the Cardinals bullpen, Addison Reed signs with the Twins. Now, it's not cheap. It's $16.75 million for 2 years. But it's only 2 years. That seems like not a heavy commitment. And I think the Cardinals could have used him, and then that's where we're coming from. So he must be real damn confident if that was Reed's price. I think they could have afforded that. So it's disappointing. We were all kind of given the narrative and led to believe that there would be a substantial overhaul of that bullpen, and there just hasn't been, no matter how you want to look at it. Now, if they want to give the young guys give them opportunities for someone to emerge, okay. I just think it's the wrong time to do it at the closer position. The rest I'm fine with. All right. I think last thing really coming out of there is, Pete, you alluded to it just a little while ago, was Tommy Pham. Is he going to be a 30-30 player? Is he going to be the Cardinals' first 30-30 player? You're not buying it.
Are you hearing me?
Come on. Yep.
Okay. There's something going on there. A little technical difficulties on this end. only if one of those 30s is his age. You know, he had a breakout year as a 29-year-old. The likelihood that he's going to maintain the kind of performance that he had last year at age 30, I think it's a long shot. I think he's going to regress to the mean. I think that the rest of the league is going to catch up to him. I'm not saying he's going to be terrible, but a 30-30 player, I don't buy it. I don't see it.
There's a possibility that he could be, because maybe
if he stays closer to first base against John Lester.
Maybe something, yeah. I mean,
took you a while to work that one in there. I was expecting that a lot sooner.
If there was for like half the year, then that would be something. But he did it all. He sustained that success. And it's possible that he can do it. I would actually give it a 50-50 chance that he could possibly be a 30-30 player.
So I'm in. I don't want to appear to sound like I'm on the fence about this, guys, but my only question on him is it's health. If he can stay healthy,
yeah, that's
and
huge.
Motivated, I think he has a shot at doing that. I don't see if again, a lot depends on health. He is 30, you're right, Pete, and he is a late bloomer, but so was a guy like Josh Donaldson. So it does happen. I wish the guy was about 3 years younger than he is, but it is what it is. I think health, and if the Cardinals are playing well and he's motivated, I think he has a shot at doing it. Is he going to be a 30-30 player for 4 or 5 years in a row? No, probably not. But I think he has as good a shot as any. Imagine where they would have been last year if he hadn't come up, and he wasn't even in their plans at the beginning of the year. He was in AAA. So he was playing with a chip on his shoulder, and I think he wants to prove himself over a full season. So I like Tommy Pham because he has some personality that the Cardinals kind of lack last year, especially when you started the season out. So I like that.
He plays with a little fire.
Yeah.
It's nice to see.
It's great to see.
And the other thing that we don't know about, and this isn't unique to Tommy Pham, is we don't know how baseball is going to, and by baseball, I mean the commissioner's office, is going to adjust to all the home runs that happened last year. It was right. Agreed by
start using the old balls.
Right, exactly. It was pretty much agreed by everybody except the commissioner's office that the balls were juiced. It wasn't just a matter of a launch angle revolution. The balls were jumping last year. To the point where guys who where a 20 home run hitter now is nothing spectacular. A 30 home run hitter in years past would have gotten paid, and it's not happening this offseason. And it's partly because the value of 30 home run hitters has been diminished. We don't know what Major League Baseball is going to do to adjust to that. And I'm not talking about the pitchers. I'm not talking about strategies against pitchers. I'm talking about the commissioner's office. We may see a new ball this year. And if that happens, Tommy Pham hitting 30 home runs may be a tougher lift than Tommy Pham stealing 30 bases.
Or getting picked off more than once next year.
That could be.
By John Lester. Pete, it's terrible. You are an advertisement, because there is no way that you're coincidentally lifting that glass up to your lips with that Cub logo shining perfectly center camera.
What are you talking about? It was a Christmas present from my brother-in-law, who now is actually fairly close to you. Going to be moving to Savannah, Georgia soon.
It's not too far away.
No,
is it still in Cincinnati's market?
No, I believe that's the Braves.
Okay. Just making sure, if I drive to the beach here, which is about 3.5 hours away, I'm out of Cincinnati's market. So I don't know where the cutoff is. I wonder if you can feel it when you pass through it. I just never paid attention. Like, oh, God, I'm finally away from Ohio. I'm in Myrtle Beach. So the Garrett Cole thing finally settled itself, as well as Andrew McCutchen, whose name has been floating out there since last year. How do you guys feel about that? Imagine if you're a Pirates fan right now. 41,000 signatures. That's how they feel. Asking Major League Baseball to force their owner to sell that team.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
This
is one point.
Hold on. Let me ask you. Do you know what he had to say about it?
Let me guess. Here's where you're going to get your rant, Ron. This is one of the reasons why I hate the internet, because 41,000 people signing a petition think that they actually have some kind of ability to influence a $1 billion industry.
It's still that 41,000 people bothered doing it.
I know. There are 41,000 idiots. One of the things that I hate most about the internet is the rise of these online petitions. Like, something is really going to happen because you sign some stupid petition online. Mm-hmm. It requires nothing out of you other than, navigating my browser window to change.org. You must force the Pirates ownership to sell. You fucking loser.
And they all
get up
glasses,
off the
right?
couch, put down yes, they do. Put down the Twinkie and go get a life. I mean, seriously, you really think that your stupid signature on a petition is going to get one of 30 people with enough money to actually own a baseball team to sell? Come on. Idiot. And I don't disagree with them. It stinks what the Pirates ownership has done to them. But they also need to realize that they just, their team was good at a really bad time. They have something in common with the Cavaliers of the 80s and the Pistons of the late 80s, early 90s, and the New York Knicks and the Utah Jazz. Those are all teams that probably in any other universe could have won a championship. They just happened to be good when Michael Jordan was playing basketball. Mm-hmm. And the same thing's true for the Pirates. They just happened to be good when Madison Bumgarner and Jake Arrieta had two of the most dominating postseason resumes in baseball history. Sorry, you guys were great. You probably, in a 5-game series, the Pirates probably beat the Cubs in 2015. But they didn't. It was a 1-game playoff. And they faced the best pitcher in baseball that year, and especially at that time, and he handled them. And I'm sorry it broke down for you that way, but your team right now, your 3 best players are getting old, and their value is probably at its peak. So selling McCutchen to the Giants, being able to leverage Garrett Cole, who, when you really look at his internals, maybe he's top
the
50.
last 2 years.
Yeah, if you look at the last 2 years, I think it'd be hard to argue he's one of the top 20 best pitchers in baseball. And you got a fairly decent haul out of him. And you're probably going to get the most out of Josh Harrison. So flip it. Don't,
Yeah,
if you move now, you don't have to go into.
You need to. Yeah.
If you move now, you don't have to go into a full rebuild.
Yeah,
you can just go into a retool.
I think the rub with the Pirates fan though is that when they were good, Pete, and you were just talking about that, is they were potentially a move or two away to kind of like look at Houston. I'm not trying to compare their record to Houston, but when they
move
and they didn't do anything to help that 98 win team get over the hump.
Right. 98
wins. Look what the Astros did, right? It took a move like Justin Verlander. It doesn't mean there was a Justin Verlander available at that time, but there were guys available. They and the fact that they didn't do anything, I think, is what really gets that fan irritated. So I feel for them, but the Pirates really had no choice. They had to trade both of those guys, and they should trade Josh Harrison now. I totally agree with you, and it's good news for us because that's probably another 2-3 wins
for each of our teams. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Especially if they move Josh.
So Ron, I've got a comment for you, not to kind of take us back a little bit, but
okay.
I got a comment from some guys on Discord, and he wanted the Kelly thing. So he said, going to rot on the bench this year, and the Cardinals would be completely moronic to not even consider trading Kelly. He said, look how important the catcher position is. Pretend that Kelly becomes the number 1 starter from 2020 on and say that he plays around like 12 years. That would mean the Cardinals would have in Molina and Kelly from 2004 to 2032.
So they'd be completely moronic to keep him on the bench. I lost you there for just a second.
To even consider trading Kelly.
To even consider trading Kelly? Yeah, I mean, I think we all feel the same way. He's the number 2, I think, rated catching prospect, and you've got that there when you've got a guy on his he's on the wrong side of his career right now. It's winding down, and I don't disagree with that at all. But Carson Kelly's sitting there for 3 years potentially. Right now, unless Molina's tune changes, I think it's going to be tough this year for Kelly to get many starts. So I'd be more interested to know if the Cardinals are going to actually keep him up on the big league roster, or do they want him to continue developing and stay sharp and actually give him some time in AAA so he can get back into a routine of catching consistently.
Right. It's kind of like what the Cubs with Caratini, where going to get enough playing time to keep his skills sharp. So they ended up sending him back down to the minors and bringing in a couple of veteran guys, which were okay not playing every single day, but had the skill set to be able to come in and be productive. Yeah, with those young guys, I mean, you can't sit on the bench for out of the week and be expected to potential that you could be at.
Yep. No, I don't disagree. I mean, the only thing is that if they had that would just kill the whole thing right there. If they had another prospect that showed promise that could take over when Molina is officially done, then maybe it could be a trade chip for you.
Well, apparently there's been some talk about this guy. What's his name? Neisner, Knizner. I don't know how he pronounces it, but he's apparently moving up. So if you think that Yadi can be serviceable for 2 more years, and if you think that this other kid can be ready in 2 years, when you've got 3 years left of Yadi, I don't know, maybe then you do entertain the possibility of dangling Kelly and seeing what you can get for him in order to prepare this other kid and to make your team more competitive this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you set your price high,
right? I mean, that's what we've talked about it time and time again. You don't just develop a farm system so that you can have a really good farm system. You develop a farm system so that you can move them for the pieces that you need in order to compete.
Yep. Yeah, because out of all of the outfielders, they had the glut of outfielders they had. Not all of them were going to be on the MLB roster, all for the Cardinals. You do that for a reason, and that is to be able to acquire. It's another thing that Cardinal fans we heard a lot about as the season ended, that the Cardinals had a lot of prospects from which to deal. They had a lot of money from which to deal, and we haven't seen a whole lot of money being spent, and we haven't seen a whole lot of real dealing, to be honest with you. So I think it's just another one of those things that hasn't, what we thought was going to happen just hadn't happened yet, and that's kind of what we're left with. But last thing, guys, we're kind of running a little bit long here. Wilson Contreras. What the hell is he doing? I got to say this, guys. I mean, everybody who's listening right now or will be listening to this tomorrow, we all know the story. Okay. And I'll say, even the first time I read it, my first initial knee jerk, just reading the comments, I'm like, what? He's going to get flamed for this, right? I mean, there's going to be flame shot out. We all have the natural tendency to want to defend our player. And then Yadi's response came later, and we'll talk about that later. But my initial impression was like, what the? Why would he state this publicly? Reading through it again, however, I think that I kind of saw where he was going. I just think the way it was stated wasn't reflective of what was going on in his head.
And let's remember that English is not his first language.
Exactly. Right. No, you're exactly right. I think these guys, they're a catching fraternity somewhat, but I think most of these guys are pretty tight, and they usually have each other's back. They defend each other. So I got over that one real quick. The internet didn't. The internet did not. Didn't really,
to say the least.
And it's fun when something like this happens. You just read some of the dumbest things, and it happened on both sides, to be honest with you. But anyway, guys, we can talk about it a little bit. Since then, I think Molina fired a shot back. The All-Star picture. Said, depending on how you translated it, was respect to whatever kid, and I cringed a little bit but Yadi gets defensive. He's taken to social media at least a couple times that I know of, even against his manager last year. Defending his defending his desire to play. So it's not his nature. But guys, I don't see this as a controversy like the statement Brandon Phillips made about the Cardinals back in 2010. And then there was a bench clearing brawl one game. This is not the same thing. I
don't think there's going to be any ill will taken between and Wilson Contreras. The fans, maybe. I mean, there'll be some.
Let's just
face it, a little bit. Yeah. And it's probably going to go back and forth for.
Well, we should address something.
I wouldn't say Wilson.
You broke up there just a little bit.
Okay.
You broke up just a little bit, so I missed a little bit of what you were talking about. But I think that if we look at both of these players, right? We can certainly compare what they're going to be, what they were at the end of this last year, what we think they're going to be at the beginning of this year. The thing is, guys, we would all have a preference of one player over the other depending on the situation, right? If you had a big game and you needed somebody to call it, or you wanted to stop the base running, you're going to pick one or the other, right?
I'm going to separate the two. If I wanted somebody to call it, I probably want Yadi. If I want somebody to stop the base running, I don't know. I may want Wilson.
Well, let me throw something at you though, because let's just debate that one point right there. Who had the most stolen base attempts against them? Because that'll tell you who the league thinks.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The Cubs are
because if you have a pitcher
here for having a rotation that was ridiculously slow to the plate. It came up time and again. It's why Miguel Montero left the team. It's why Miguel Montero left the team was because he lit up Jake Arrieta. The pitchers for the Cubs are slow to the plate. Wilson Contreras mitigated that, but he can't stop that himself when his entire rotation is some of the slowest guys in baseball coming to the plate. It doesn't matter what his pop time is. His pop time would have to be 0 in order to shut down a running game with the pitchers that he was catching. So that is not a fair comparison. If you take out that factor,
are you certain? Are you certain?
I am certain. I am certain. The Cubs rotation was last year one of the slowest rotations to the plate. And if you want me to look up the stats while you continue going down this road, I will.
You do whatever you want, my friend. I'm not there to stop you. I'm just saying that, look, that's one of the telltale signs. If people want to look at and you have a valid point, and I do remember that Montero incident, and we talked about that last year. Boy, what a stupid talk about saying stupid shit in front of media, and people getting on Contreras for saying something at a Cubs convention. Look at that example, right? And then you're out of a job quickly.
Throwing your pitcher under the bus and cussing with some kids in the room is two different things.
So if you look at, stolen, okay, fine, we'll go with stolen base percentage, and it might be the same. You could have the same argument there, Pete, that his chance to catch a would-be base stealer or a base stealer is lower if the pitcher's taking that much more time to get them the ball. But it's a stat, and so if you look at it, you go, all right, Molina was about 36%. And I don't know where that ranked in the league. I'd have to pull that up, but he was somewhere around 36%. And I think Contreras is around 27%. But you're probably going to tell me that, and you might have a point. You're probably going to tell me, well, this is the pitching staff is not off the hook for this defensive ability of a catcher, right? I mean, they do play a part of it. So you're correct. Adam Wainwright, for instance, can get to the plate pretty quick. And he's had to learn how to get to the plate pretty quick because he's let a lot of base runners on lately, right? But so Arrieta is Lester also. He's also known to be a guy you can steal off of, right? Pretty easy. One, his inability to throw to first base or his reluctance to. You can take a little bit bigger lead over there. From what I understand, though, I mean, he's a guy that people like to run on.
You know what? He is, but it's interesting. People take leads on Lester, and remember this from a conversation last year. Lester actually doesn't get stolen on more than average than other pitchers.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of dancing at the bases when he is pitching.
So let's look at that.
It doesn't get stolen on since Wilson Contreras was brought up. And there has been a study. The number of attempts against John Lester decreased once the Cubs started having Wilson Contreras catch him. I distinctly remember reading that last year.
They would steal on David Ross all day.
Correct.
So I'm just looking at this going, okay, so Molina's still at his age, 120, number of innings. He had 133 starts. I know we were talking about that earlier. 1,127 innings. That's a lot on a 35-year-old, right? Wilson Contreras, 95 games started, but he was in 120 of those. That's interesting. You guys explain that one to me. How's he start 95? Did he come in as a defensive replacement quite often?
Yeah.
How does that number? Okay, so he just came in late innings maybe, or partway through, or a double switch or something.
Yeah, there was a lot of games where he'd come in late as a defensive replacement and for a bat.
Okay,
and hit,
so
and then he would end up catching.
So a total of 875 innings though. Behind the plate, 84 stolen base attempts. Actually, point taken. This could have everything to do with the Cubs pitching staff, but stolen base attempts were made on him more than anybody else in baseball. James McCann, sorry, not Brian, James McCann. I don't know that guy. 81 attempts. 81 attempts. Real Muto. This is from Miami, 78. Guy from Milwaukee. Not sure how to pronounce that. Looks easy, but I bet it's different. I don't know if is it spelled right. VOGT is how the last name's spelled. Anyway, 77, and the list goes on and on. Yadi or Molina. Somewhere in the middle of the road there is Yadi sitting at number 14. So somewhere in the middle of the road. A lot of innings, 67 attempts, caught 24 of them for a percentage of 36%. Now the ERA of the team is 4.01. I guess we're going back to who do we go to shut the running game down, right? So who's a guy that's attempted the most, that has the right number of innings? You've got, I don't want to go through this, guys. This is a long list here, but if you look at Nick Hundley, 51 attempts. Did that have to do with San Francisco's pitching staff? Or did it have to do with San Francisco's pitching staff allowing a boatload of runs and nobody had to steal on the Giants last year? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Defensively calling a game, I agree with you, Pete. I want Yadi back there because of his time back there and his experience.
Yeah. Wilson needs to work on the one part of his game that needs work is receiving, right? Calling a game and receiving the ball, framing pitches. And I don't think that and also blocking pitches. I don't think anybody would argue that. He got better last year, but he still needs to work on that aspect. And let's remember, Wilson Contreras did not start out as a catcher. He started out as an infielder.
His framing did get a lot better last year.
It did. But when it comes to shutting down a running game, I think the strength of his arm, as quickly as he comes out of his crouch, and also his willingness to throw anytime and anywhere, it definitely makes a difference, especially when you can be throwing to somebody who's a tag wizard like Javier Baez. Now, just going to go back because you made me look it up. In 2015, when Wilson Contreras was still in the minors, 44 base runners attempted steals against John Lester. 44. And only 20% of them were caught. 11. Okay. In 2016, Wilson Contreras was brought up 28 attempts against John Lester. So from 44 to 28, almost cut it in half. And the caught stealing percentage went up to 32%. Last year when Wilson Contreras was
who was catching for the Cubs at 15? Or is that what you're looking at?
15, right? I'm looking at it. In 15, it was Wilson Contreras, or it was David Ross and Miguel Montero primarily. In 16, it was Montero, Ross, and then Contreras the last half of the season. And it increased. Last year, when Wilson Contreras was John Lester's primary catcher, only 19 stolen base attempts, 39% caught stealing percentage. Wilson Contreras made a difference. That cannot be attributable to anything other than him, because John Lester's time to the plate really didn't change that much. His willingness to throw over didn't change that much. Wilson Contreras definitely had an effect on runners being caught running against John Lester.
How many of those base runners did he pick off first?
That could be. That's obviously not fit into John Lester's stats, but if Contreras is picking them off, it's still going down as a win in Wilson's column.
Remember, at least a half a dozen back picks. Just throwing it down to Rizzo and catching those guys with big ass leads.
Right.
Okay, so we're at an impasse on shutting the running game down because we spent too much time on it already.
And we're talking about right now. We're not talking about Yadi Molina at his peak. Molina at his peak, right. Yes, I would absolutely rather have him than Wilson Contreras right now.
We're looking at 2017 numbers right now.
Right.
You're right. No, I'm not looking at Yadi 10 years ago. So okay. So we'll agree a bit to disagree. I don't think there's enough of a contrasting difference if I have somebody behind the plate. I want Yadi defensively for right now, as of right now.
Overall, I agree.
Is it going to change by the time we get to 2019? Yeah. It very well could, and it could definitely change by the time we get to 2020.
Who knows?
Now,
it could change.
Let's talk about batting. Well, let's talk about batting. Okay. I go back to everything's a little bit situational. If I need, let's just start here. If I need to put some pop in the lineup, that's a pretty easy one to answer, right? You guys disagree with me? Contreras would be your guy if you wanted to put some pop in the lineup. You needed it somewhere,
right?
He's got more power.
Yeah,
a little bit of he's aggressive, so he swings. He strikes out a little over, I think, 25% of the time.
I think that's right. If
I need somebody in there on a situation and I need contact to be made, something to happen, Molina's the guy I want to see in there. But I've experienced that a lot where I'm hoping he's the one that comes up when there's any situation that calls for contact. He doesn't walk a lot. He's a contact hitter, but he doesn't strike out a lot either. But what can work against him is his speed, so he is a double play victim.
But what we don't know right now was the Wilson Contreras that we saw for that stretch immediately after the All-Star game until he got hurt, was that a fluke or is that the potential? Because if that was the potential, I still want Wilson Contreras at the plate when you need contact because he was a monster during that stretch. He grew into the cleanup solution for the Cubs at that point. There was during that point, that stretch of time, there was nobody else I wanted coming to the plate when you had a runner on the bags. Because he was going to come through. He was going to make contact, and you're right. He had a lot of pop. He was going to do some damage.
Situation, though, like that I need I know Yadi, he doesn't strike out a lot, but he doesn't walk a lot. He's a contact guy. Speed works against him. He's never been fast. He's been a smart base runner when he gets on. He knows how to take advantage of something when somebody's falling asleep or not paying attention. But offensively, I do at this point in time where they're at, and especially as we start working into 2018, I think Contreras is the guy I go to for a steady offensive presence. He has a lot of upside there. So the point is, guys, everybody's getting pissy about this. These are both really good catchers. Yadi has a pretty long and built-up resume. But he's on the wrong side of his career. I don't mean that as a negative. It's just, he's at the end of it.
It's not a negative at all. It's a reality.
Yeah. Right. And there's nothing wrong with Wilson saying he wants to be
better.
What Yadi or Molina has been.
Level-headed Cardinal fans would agree with that. Yeah. Anybody with a level head would agree with that. I mean, of course.
I would hope that you guys
story.
I would hope that at some point you guys get a third baseman who comes up and says he wants to be Chris Bryant, but be better than Chris Bryant. We know that's probably not possible, but I mean, because we're not talking about his baseball ability, we're talking about those dreamy eyes. We got to take the whole package in the ability to make all those endorsements, those beautiful blue eyes that you just lose yourself in. I mean, who could be better than Chris Bryant?
Swoon.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, you asked the question, and if any of my players made a statement like that, it would be cringeworthy to me. Like, oh, don't do it. Here come the flames.
Oh yeah, you knew what was coming. I think everybody knew what was coming except for Wilson Contreras.
Now, you know what? I'll give him credit though because he responded twice after that, and I think it's a dead issue at this point.
I do too. And the one benefit that I think may come out of this is that there may be an early appreciation for just how good Yadi or Molina has been over the course of the season, because I think that it's causing people, including one of my favorite targets on Twitter recently, to take a retrospective look, not just at Yadi's entire career, but how he stacks up against, the 20 best catchers in baseball history, where he falls on that. And I don't think you're going to get an argument out of anybody that when Yadi or Molina's name shows up on the Hall of Fame, he's going in on his first ballot, at least
first ballot.
If I had a vote, he would.
Yeah.
I've always said that as much as I dislike Yadi or Molina, I would take him in a second to be my catcher. I've always said that. I like him because he's so good for a team I despise.
Well,
that's why I hate him.
Well, you know what? There are, if nobody's watching, some Cardinal fans, if nobody's around and you get to pick a Cub off the team or a couple of them, they do it. Even though we can't stand them, there are a couple players, dude, man, I could see them in red.
Contreras.
They're pretty damn good.
Bryant.
Contreras? No, I'll take my chances
Rizzo.
with Kelly.
Really?
No, Rizzo's not Rizzo.
Really?
Cardinals have a need at third base. Big time.
Yeah, you do.
You want those dreamy eyes at third base.
That's right.
I want his bat at the plate, and I don't care if I have his glove at third base or not, but that's where he's got to play. Nah, Chris
He can
Bryant.
play wherever you put him. Left field. Right
Yeah,
field.
when's Fowler's contract up? When's his last year of arbitration eligibility?
Bryant's, he's got 3 more years. He's a Super 2.
Man, lining up with Fowler as it ends. All right.
He's going to stick around. He wants to play with his best friend.
That's going to be so fun next year.
It is.
I mean,
Especially
that'll be fun. I'll hate it, but that is going to be great.
Wait, I want to hear why you think it's going to be great.
It's going to be a lot to talk about, man. There's going to
It is.
what's going to happen is
Especially the dismay if he doesn't sign with the Cubs.
Oh my God. There is
That
going to
would
be
be even better.
such
You
disappointment.
will see so many veins being opened live on YouTube.
Oh shit! Don't say that. But if it does happen, what you're going to see is just there's going to be, the whole love fest and all that shit, and Cardinal fans are just going to be vomiting all over their laptops or their iPads or their phones.
Oh, you think that's bad? Wait until he gets
it's
announced
gonna be-
at the Cubs convention. He is going to get. He will get the loudest cheer of any player. It doesn't, and even if they win the World Series this year, right? And Chris Bryant bats 750 with 10 home runs and 30 RBIs, it doesn't matter. Bryce Harper will get introduced, and he will get the loudest. Actually, Chris Bryant might get a louder cheer.
Does he?
God,
Well, let me ask you this, guys: who sells more jerseys in one full year after Harper joins the Cubs?
Oh, it'll be Harper. Because
Harper.
they're New Jerseys.
It would be the #1 selling jersey in baseball for 2019.
Yeah, because it's a jersey that Cubs fan forget about any other non-Chicagoans, any other non.
Because more than likely you're going to know he's going to be with the team for the next 10 years. Right. So that's a great jersey to purchase.
Right, and it's a jersey you don't have. Right? Like if Chris Bryant suddenly signs an extension for so let's play this out. Bryce Harper signs for 10 years next year, and that spurs Chris Bryant to go to Scott Boras and say, okay, let's sign that extension. I want to be here as long as Bryce is here. And he signs a 10-year extension right then and there, right? The Cubs they buy out his last 3 years of arbitration and his next 7 years. And it's for a ridiculous amount of money. You're not going to sell more Chris Bryant jerseys. You will, because fans already have them. You're going to sell a shitload of Bryce Harper jerseys.
Who's going to be the face of that team 2 years after he signs?
Anthony Rizzo.
Whose team is that?
It's Anthony Rizzo's team until he signs a contract with somebody else.
2022?
And then it's Chris Bryant's team.
Okay. You still think it's Chris Bryant's team?
Yeah, because Chris Bryant won the World Series.
Yeah.
Even if they win a World Series with Bryce Harper, Chris Bryant won the first one.
You think Bryce Harper would want, wherever he goes, does he want that to be his team?
Yes.
Okay.
But will it? No, because they're buddies, man.
They're buddies now.
They have game night. Come on, Ron. You want this to be your podcast. We're good friends, but you want this to be your podcast as much as I want it to be mine. But I know it's yours. I know it's yours.
Mine. I just grabbed it. I grabbed it away and I just looked it around and I said, mine! It's mine! All right.
I know, but that's not going to destroy my desire to want to be on here. And
the problem is
the same for Elliott.
You're way warmer than I am right now. So I'm ready to call it.
Well, in that case, I think that what Ron is saying is he wants me to remind everybody to follow us on Twitter at Team Arrivals Pod, on Instagram at Team Arrivals Podcast, and you can find us also on Facebook at Team Arrivals Podcast. Most importantly, you can find everything linked at teamarrivalspodcast.com. You can find links to all of those social media feeds, including Elliott's media feed, which has a new handle, doesn't it?
I do have a new Twitter handle. I have changed it from what it previously was. to TOR_Elliott. That is ELLIOTT.
Lots of doubles in there. Maybe like
two L's,
Jason,
2 T's.
Maybe like Jason Hayward's 2018 season. Anyway, teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can contact us by email at show@teamofrivalspodcast.com. And obviously, you're probably already watching or listening to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, or Spotify. Please not only listen, rate, and review, but also remember to subscribe, whether it's hitting a thumbs up, starring us, adding us as a favorite, subscribing to us so that you get those notifications and it lets you know that, yes, there is new content available. Because while we do try to maintain this Friday, Saturday release schedule, if there is new information that pops up, we're going to jump online and we're going to record a new episode. And I know that you can definitely look forward in, what is it, Ron? 3 weeks? You can look forward to 2 episodes coming out in the week as we assess the Cubs and the Cardinals heading into pitchers and catchers reporting.
Yeah. So if you, depending on who you're rooting for, and you got bored with the other team's content, then you got to listen to those, because one will be dedicated to only Cubs and one will be dedicated only Cardinals, which means that half this podcast crew is going to have to suffer, and we're going to have to pay attention a little bit, right, to the other guys.
That's
I usually get all my news, and if my insights come from you guys, I don't get a lot of them myself into Cubs news, so I'm gonna have to do my homework on that one. I'll do it.
I'm gonna have to go to those Redbird sites, and that's gonna be weird.
Oh, it's awful, isn't it? You joined, man. How's that working? You trolling it?
It's okay. I see the stuff come up.
I honestly can't believe you. I can't believe you joined it as a Cub fan. Okay.
No, it's all right, but I do need to make a comment to the guy on Discord that says Carson Kelly is better than Contreras. You're wrong, because
please, he hasn't even done anything.
Freaking crazy,
guys. Wilson Contreras has already
that's like
been
Contreras
worth 5.
say.
Go ahead.
Half WAR.
Yeah, he's already been worth 5 WAR in less than a year and a half.
Right, and then he wanted to get our thoughts on the Wrigley Field bathroom trough slides. They're stupid. Drunk morons that don't belong at Cubs games do that shit, and don't bring it up again.
Wait, trough slides?
Wow. Yeah, explain that to me. What does that mean?
What's a trough slide?
The troughs in the bathroom that drunk idiots will slide down, and that's full of piss.
They slide down them? I have never seen this before.
I haven't either, guys.
I've been
there quite a few times.
There's videos on YouTube that's drunk college idiots that don't know anything about baseball, and then that are Wrigley drinking because they have the means to buy tickets to a game.
Oh boy!
So it's all the Cubs fans that I've hated for the last 20 years.
Yes, these are the guys that spend the entire time on their phone instead of watching a game.
Because I will tell you, if it was just a question about troughs, they're actually a more efficient installation than urinals. You can fit more people in square footage of troughs than you can in the same square footage of urinals.
Nobody cares about that. Hold that logo up. All right, guys. Now that we're done talking about piss troughs and everything, can we go? Because I'm speaking of that. I gotta go.
Control, aren't you?
I am. Guys, thank you very much. I like the content we got this week, and I hope we get a lot more going into next week. Hope some more things happen, because it's January and we know it can get brutal. Everyone, if you're listening to us for the first time, thank you so much. We're glad to have you, and we're going to do this every week, so look forward to it. We'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone. Freezing.
You are just going to pass away.
I'm just going to pass away. I don't know if I stay out there any longer.
Float away.
All right, boys. That was good.
Yeah. I'll write up
let's do it again next week.
All right. Sounds good. I'll write up a quick synopsis.
Okay. All right, guys.
Warm up, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too.